Well, if you're one of those people used to going to enjoy Comic-Con in San Diego, may have seemed like it was a little flat this year on account of the COVID virus, not really a live Comic-Con. That's where you can see all of this stuff called cosplay, which stands for costume play. Cosplay is where nerds get kind of dressed up as superheroes or supervillains and cover up their neckbeards and stuff and show that they really are, in fact, Captain America. And I'm not judging because God knows I've done this kind of thing myself in the past. But for those of you who thought that Comic-Con was stale, it turned out it wasn't actually canceled. It was just moved somewhat north to the great city of Portland, Oregon. And I know that Portland, Oregon is now hosting Comic-Con and the Cosplay Festival because of the Washington Post that did a gritty, down and dirty, serious photo montage of the black desperate street people who've simply had so much police brutality that they simply can't take it anymore. So why don't we take a look at some of these photos done by the Washington Post in a real story by the Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness. Let's just have a look at some of them, shall we? Turns out that this is a family of four. You can see Torin here. This is what she looks like in her day job as a professional composter. Scott, what did you describe that thing that she's holding as?
An emotional support chicken.
Fair enough. But if you then go to the next photograph, of course, you can see that when she's ready for combat, she doesn't mess around. And I might point out that I suspect that the hot pink is either recycled from or will be recycled to the next kind of code pink meeting that we get.
Is that bottle a beverage or an accelerant or some sort of corrosive fluid? Do we know?
It's patchouli oil and lavender. So there's that. We can get to also meet her husband, or at least her partner, named Kim, who is riding a lawnmower in a fashion that is more menacing than I ever thought a lawnmower could ever project. But Kim looks like the kind of happy-go-lucky guy who you might expect to see at one of these mostly peaceful protests. And you can see Kim in the next picture looking remarkably like Freddy Krueger's kind of nutty uncle who embarrasses Freddy out on Elm Street, like Uncle Timmy. Could you just go home, please?
Now, is he cruising on that John Deere through his hood with where his homies hang?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's his ride. And he basically tours the neighborhood and keeps his bitches in line. So that's one guy. And then we can look at the daughter, Maya, who's just looks perfectly relaxed and lovely in her crochet hammock. But if you look at her in her warrior costume, you can see that she means business. And I actually would like to take just a moment to talk about Maya and her outfit there. You might notice that the pink on the gloves matches, not precisely, but just in a very aesthetically pleasing way, the purple filters that she managed to get for her gas mask. And she's holding the cosplay Portland equivalent of the BFG 9000, which is the leaf blower, which providentially looks like some kind of plasma cannon. Certainly if I was in cosplay in Comic-Con, that's what I would bring. Just a few more just to get the taste. Here's the sun.
Was she in the Girl Ghostbusters?
No. She was too talented for that particular program. We can see the son here straining, using all of his might to lift a partially filled small garbage bag out of a garbage container in the kitchen. But when you scroll down and see him in his battle gear, he's a formidable looking hombre. And just look at that expression. It's not somebody you'd want to meet on a dark street at night. No. And then just moving down just a little bit, we can see, I think this guy's name is Eric McCartney. The picture here, of course, is the famous one that made him cover boy for American Beta magazine. But nevertheless, when you see him in his riot gear, now you're talking about a genuine threat to professional police and military forces everywhere.
Did you notice that he has a garland of radishes and carrots hanging from his fireplace?
that
I did
wards
not.
off the police.
All I could see was the semi authentic looking Palestinian neck scarf here in the combat attire. But knowing these guys, it's probably the traditional outfit of the slave trading African tribe that basically powered the entire slave trade. But we'll move on. And then I'd just like to go down to this one married couple. If you keep scrolling down, Mac Smith and Ree Smith. Mac is a journalist. You can see he's a serious journalist from this picture. But when you see when Max had enough journalizing and has decided it's time to get serious, it is refreshing to see at least one black person in this Black Lives Matter protest in Portland. I have to say that. But you can see, Scott, you had an opinion about him in his combat gear as a member of the press. You want to repeat that from our backstage?
By the way, that book he's reading there in his regular life is Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which I'm sure is in the pockets of every Antifa protester in the streets of Portland. Yeah,
right
I thought
next to Mao's little red book.
That's right. I thought it was interesting that a guy had the word press on his hat, and he works for a magazine apparently called We Out Here. So apparently they don't have like that Grammarly check thing.
One of the many levels of editorial checking and balancing missed the apostrophe RE. But
when I was a reporter back in the day, I used to carry like a stenographer's notepad and a pen, and usually a backup pen. And then occasionally, if I was going to do a lengthy interview, I would have a recording device with me. But in this case, it looks like he's got like a canister of pepper spray around his neck and a bullhorn. If you're with the press, usually you're not the story, you're not the speaker, you're the asker of questions and the documenter of news. So that struck me as odd.
And Steve, you would know better than I, but I'm looking at the picture of this extremely serious warrior for social justice, and it appears to me that he's wearing the Thanos gauntlet of power.
Yeah. You know, my 14-year-old, who I guess was probably 12 at the time, 13 at the time, whenever the movie came out, was kind of obsessed with collecting all the Lego sets because you had to buy 6 different sets to get the 6 different colored gems for the Thanos glove. And
very clever.
And did I mention he was 13?
Well, all I'm saying is when I'm going out to do battle on the streets of America against fascism, pastels are the way you really want to go.
It really is.
Yeah.
Apparently there's been some confusion here. What's actually happened is that there was a Mad Max themed costume party, but there was a catch. Actually, there were a couple of catches to this particular costume party. Number one, the host was only allowed to invite people who had never actually seen the movie, and they were only allowed to use things they could find in their garage or laundry room.
That explains the loudspeaker. And finally, we see his wife, who by all accounts looks like an extremely competent nurse by daytime, but by nighttime, she is down with the proletariat in every single way. You can tell from that somewhat professional looking pose. She's really got a chance to show off all the gear, including the homemade Red Cross on the shoulders. And Scott, again, from our backstage show, you noticed something about this particular proletarian that I thought was kind of interesting in terms of the class differential that she suffers from.
Well, yes, with the rest of her oppressed brothers and sisters, she raises her fist, and her wrist is smartly attired with a $600 Apple Watch on there. I also noticed that, I don't know, I guess the average person, the average woman probably doesn't like you staring at her torso for lengthy periods of time, but for some reason she didn't think it would be enough to have the words Black Lives Matter just once, but a dozen times on her chest. So you literally have to stand there and read for like 30 seconds if you want to get it all in. That just struck me as unusual.
It's a honey trap for male chauvinist pigs. So really, guys, I had a lot of fun with that, and certainly these people deserve to be mocked because, again, they don't look really serious. But we're not really mocking these people. These people believe in what they're doing, and so on. I think the whole thing's kind of illustrative of what these protests come to. But I'm not really mocking the people so much as I'm mocking the Washington Post, a newspaper that used to have some significance, as you may recall, back in the day, for running this radical chic fashion spread, and more than anything, really, for the Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness, as all three of us have commented in the past. It's not just a masthead; it's a mission statement. For somehow thinking
I have a riddle for you.
That this would be impressive to people. I guess that's really what I wanted to ask you both. Steve, what kind of person at the Washington Times would write
Washington
this
Post.
and think, oh, I'm sorry, yes, Washington Post would write a story like this and then send out a Washington Post photographer and think that people would find these folks either intimidating or serious or sympathetic or anything. I mean, honestly, where does that come from?
So I thought of a riddle. Why does democracy die in darkness? The Washington Post likes to do it with the lights off.
Okay, then you got it. There you go. Is there an excuse for this, or is this just another example of the echo chamber?
It's pure propaganda is what it is. You can't be a journalist in this country and be unaware that these mostly peaceful protests. Here's the thing. Mostly peaceful means partly violent.
That's right.
That's what it means. It means partly violent. These are partly violent protests. I had a commenter on today's Insanity Wrap over at PJ Media say, or maybe it was an Inspira commenter, I can't remember which, say that calling these protests mostly peaceful is like calling the Enola Gay's mission over Hiroshima mostly peaceful. Because, it was 6 hours each way. And there's really just
excellent point.
It's
a mostly peaceful flight, yeah.
Yeah. 12-hour flight, mostly peaceful. If you're around my age, I'm 51 now. Before we had Star Wars, we had, for our science fiction thrills, the $6 Million Man. And I love that show right up until Star Wars came out. And it's like, forget about you. But my best friend and I in preschool and kindergarten had his routine on the playground where we would take turns reenacting the introduction of the $6 Million Man and say, I would start off as the narrator, narrating the intro to the show. I can't even remember how it begins anymore. And then
Steve Austin,
Kevin,
a man barely alive. We can rebuild him.
Right.
We have the technology.
And Kevin would be at the top of the slide, and then he'd crash down the slide and sprawl in the gravel like Steve Austin has just crashed his space plane and all that. And then some other kids would get around, patch him up, and then we'd flip it around. He would do the narration, and I would crash down the slide. It was so much fun, and I still like doing stuff like this. I like doing. We take the family to the Renaissance Fair every year, get dressed up, drink a lot. It's like a costume party with 1,500 strangers. It's just a lot of fun. What we don't do when we do these things is expect to be taken seriously. And we're not driving an odious political agenda when we do these things. Scott, I know you got a big heart and you want to give these people the benefit of the doubt, but by and large, Black Lives Matter, noble sentiment. The organization is run by goddamn self-confessed Marxists. It's evil. Antifa, bunch of goddamn communists, and they're evil. This is play acting done by people with a violent streak trying to impose an odious agenda. Screw these guys. Mock these guys. I've had enough.
This photo spread actually kind of shows you they're not really Marxists so much as they're Marxish. They're kind of Marxish. Scott, there's an element to these pictures that I find very interesting, and that is the fierce scowl. Once the mask is on, once the gas mask is on, the fierce scowl and the body language and all of that stuff. I think the thing that is most interesting and disturbing about this is looking at these people when they're in their protest costumes, you get the impression that they think that they're ready for actual violence. But I don't think that is remotely the case.
Yeah, I can actually imagine a way that this wouldn't have been so horrible. And that would be if the Washington Post had been out in the streets and caught candid images of local people involved in protest activity, and then later followed up and said, what kind of person does this, risks this way, takes a stand? And here she is. She's a nurse, and this guy's a journalist, and this person is mows his lawn with his emotional support chicken wife. Or whatever, But
it is Death Race 9000 John Doe human munching exterminator.
But that would have been a whole different thing, because I think that's a legitimate question that a reader might say, well, who are these people? But it's completely different and much more terrible when you go to people and say, hey, could you put on the costume for me? We want to take some studio shots of you dressed up like you're going to go out to the streets and defend justice. And that makes it seem childish. That makes it seem like, like, for example, the leaf blower. Well, there's a reason for the leaf blower. It's not so you can look like a cosplay badass. It's so that if some sort of toxic, tear gas or something is used to disperse a crowd, that you can actually disperse the tear gas with the leaf blower. And that's become a big thing, actually. There's a whole battalion of leaf blower troops who step up anytime tear gas is, and I don't know the proper term is tear gas, but whatever kind of smoke or whatever they're using. This just makes these people objects of derision, and it does not enhance understanding of why it is they're out there. In fact, this is a recurring theme for me over and over again, is I say to these so-called peaceful protesters, what is it that you really want? How will you know that you have succeeded? Is what you really want to point out that you've got a trash can lid for a shield and you think you're, some sort of nocturnal Captain America? I don't think that's what you want. If you really want racial justice, if you really want police reform, if you really want an end to law enforcement brutality upon innocent victims, assuming that you assume such things exist and are, happening a lot, then why not map a path to a political solution to this? Why not follow Dr. Martin Luther King, who realized that political majorities are made up of majorities and they're inherently political. And in order to get your way, it's not enough to go out to the streets dressed up like a cartoon character. You actually have to figure out a way to persuade people who don't already agree with you to adopt your views, and then to get those people elected, or to get them to vote for people that you want to have elected to office so that policy can change. That's my complaint with this whole thing. I think you're squandering an excellent opportunity, not just to have a national conversation, but to actually advance the cause of justice and civil liberties.
I do find it interesting that the Washington Post, when looking for subjects on a political uprising that is ostensibly based upon injustice towards black people, somehow managed to find the 13 whitest people in the United States of America and put them in the whitest settings they could possibly exist in. I don't think a lot of inner city blacks spend a lot of time in a crocheted hammock, to be perfectly honest with you. I really don't. And so this kind of thing is it. But I started this, and I'll end this by saying cosplay, costume play, dressing up as somebody. And I personally think I know who you're dressing up as. Whether you'll deny it till the day you die, but I've got the drop on you on this one. I know who all of these outfits you are trying to look like. And the person you're trying to look like is this guy, a United States serviceman in a combat zone with the badass helmet and real weapons and the steely-eyed look in the eye that comes from being an actual soldier in actual combat. And that's who you want to be. That's who you desperately want to be. All of the costumes you put together are designed to look like that kind of guy. And I think the irony of that is so completely lost on you that I absolutely had to bring it to your attention. I think all of you, the most progressive left-wingers among you out there, are dressing up so that you can look like a private first class in the United States Army in Afghanistan or Iraq. That's what I think is going on here. And the reason you're dressing like those people is because, unlike you, those guys have actually earned our respect. And I think you're trying to steal it from them. That's what I think. It's my show. I can think whatever I want to. And it's made possible by the members here at BillWhittle.com, who keep the lights on and keep things going. If you like this kind of content, we could use your help. We need an army. You heard me, an army of citizens here to help us deal with this kind of silliness and depravity. For Steve and Scott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next week right here on Right Angle.